No.
I'm sorry.
No. It's
Ready when you are, sir.
okay. So we'll start out with the easy question here, and just go ahead and state your name for me and spell your name so that we have that preserved on the camera.
My name is Henry Herb Stoner, Henry Herbstoner.
Okay, and how old are you and when were you born?
I am 84 years of age, going well into almost 85. I was born on the 3rd of October, 1920.
Okay, great. Where were you born? And you can expand upon your background and where you came from.
I was born in a town called Hazleton, Pennsylvania. It's spelled Hazleton. As a very small child, under a year of age, I was moved with my parents, of course, to Pottsville, Pennsylvania, where I spent all of my early education on through high school, graduating from the Pottsville High School in 1938.
Okay, and after you graduated high school? After you graduated high school, what happened?
After graduating from high school, I went to what was called a Penn State, what did they call that? I'm sorry, Extension School, Penn State Extension School, which gave me the opportunity to take my first 2 college years in my hometown, Pottsville, and then the latter 2 years of college for my BA degree in chemical engineering. I went to the Penn State campus.
Okay, and after you graduated from college, what type of work did you do prior to coming to work at K25?
Directly out of college, I went to work at what was called the Mellon Institute of Industrial Research in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It is now called Carnegie Mellon. And from there, I was actually drafted into the Navy, but upon leaving the Mellon Institute, the then director, Dr. Wideline, told me that I should immediately apply to the Carbide and Carbon Chemicals Company for employment, because he was well aware of the Manhattan Project. He could not, because of classification, tell me what it was, but he said that people with the type of engineering education that I had were needed in a special project. So I applied at the Carbide and Carbon Chemicals Company in New York, and to make a long story short, they immediately contacted me, and I went to New York, and they put me to work at the Columbia University on the Manhattan Project.
Okay, and you were at Columbia University for a while, and how did you come to work at K25?
Well, at Columbia University, I spent about 6 months doing research on barrier, which I later, many years later, became involved in its manufacture. But after 6 months, there was available in Oak Ridge residence, and I was then transferred to Oak Ridge in October of 1944.
When you first arrived down here in Oak Ridge, what were your first thoughts? What did you first think about this place?
Well, when I got off the train, I looked around in Knoxville and saw all the dirt and soot from coal, and I sent a what was then a telegram to my wife saying it looks like Pittsburgh. And so I came on to work here and spent a month working and living in a dormitory until I could get a residence in an E1 apartment, and where my wife joined me in November of 1944.
Okay. And what was the total span of your career at the K-25 site? You started in 1944, and how many years did you work there?
I started to work there in K-25 in October of 1944, and continued working there some of the time in the startup of the gaseous diffusion plant, and in later years in the design, construction, and ultimately operation of the barrier facility, in which I was employed until 1958, at which time I transferred to the Y-12 facility.
So, pretty long career here. Yes?
I was just a little concerned about that green reflection in his glasses, because
Are you catching green?
Keyed out, it's going to be a big void in both eyes.
Where right there on your glasses wouldn't look quite right.
Yeah, it's much better.
Let's see. So you got out here to K-25 really when it was still under its construction, and what was your first impressions like when you saw that, or what was the atmosphere like during the construction?
Well, actually, my first assignment, which lasted only about a month, was to teach school in the Wheat School building. There were a lot of people being trained for operators that needed refreshment in just ordinary arithmetic, adding, subtracting, dividing, and so forth. And that lasted about a month. And then I went into the operations, and it was absolutely amazing, the size of the building that was being constructed. It was still under construction. And we who had an operation assignment were to follow the construction and learn what the gas diffusion plant was all about. It was an absolutely amazing sight to see how rapidly this construction was going on. Actually, it was being built around the clock, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it just was mind-boggling, really, when you would go home at night and come back the next day and the building had moved. So it seemed, particularly when they were setting up the constructions, the structural steel. It just was just mind-boggling, really, as how rapidly that building was growing.
It seems amazing to me that there was just, I guess, to get that thing done in such a short period of time, there had to be tons of independent contractors out there, and for everybody to be doing this little piece, or one independent contractor working over here, another one working over here, and they kind of were able to get everything together and relatively accurately to get that thing together so well. I mean, Did you have any observations related to that, or?
Oh, it was without a doubt the major engineering feat of all times. The way all the people could work together and accomplish the building of a process that had no predecessor, no pilot plant. It was just went into full construction. Fortunately, they were able to draw on the best engineering and scientific minds that were available, and there was, of course, a national will to get things accomplished, and so people worked extraordinarily long hours. We worked 7 days a week, and usually, I know my own experience, I rarely worked less than 12 hours a day, and sometimes would come to work and not return for 32 hours. But there was a war, and there was a national will and desire to get things accomplished, and it was, well, looking back on it, it was just a marvelous and thrilling experience.
Okay. Where did you live when you were working at K-25, and how did you get to and from work?
I lived initially, as I think I mentioned, in an E1 apartment on Florida Avenue. And the means of getting to work, very, very few people had automobiles. They weren't even being constructed at this particular time. You couldn't buy a new automobile. So we had bus transportation to a central terminal. At the central terminal, we got on what we called cattle wagons. Actually, they were 18-wheeler trucks that had a door cut in them and benches built along each side, and they were what we rode to work, all of us carrying our lunch buckets. And then at the end of the day, and frequently, not just at the end of the day, frequently there was transportation back into Oak Ridge.
Okay.
At that particular time, by the way, there was a whole colony called a wheat colony that was primarily construction workers, and it was.
I was just going to ask you about that. So yeah, tell me more about the wheat community, and I guess there's.
Well, I know
Happy Valley or.
I know very little about it because it was a separate community, primarily of construction workers living, excuse me, in rather primitive almost conditions, but they had bowling alleys and movie theaters and everything that were going around the clock because construction was on shifts going around the clock, so the community was like Las Vegas. It never went to bed. But I know very little about it other than just traveling through it on the way to work at K-25. But it was really fantastic.
What did it consist of? Was it like tents or
Oh, no, it was a little more than tents. Primarily trailer type of construction. They could be easily moved in onto the site and provided rather primitive but living conditions for the construction workers. And as I say, for recreation, they had bowling alleys and movies that were going around the clock.
Okay. If people inquire, like if someone were to ask you what kind of work was done here, how would you describe it?
Well, the construction was the typical kind of work that you would see in most any building. There was structural steel and concrete being poured, and the thing that was unique about it, however, was the tremendous amount of piping and the large number of motors and centrifugal pumps that were being installed. That was the thing that was unique. The building itself was a regular structural steel, and the outside was, I can't bring to mind what the material was, but it was an asbestos-containing material that covered the outside. The people weren't concerned about at that time. The very size, of course, was unique. It was approximately 5 stories high, and the building, when finally completed, the U, was approximately 1 mile from one end of the U around to the other end. To move about in the building on the operating floor, we rode bicycles because of the distances one had to travel.
Did you meet any famous people or famous scientists while you were working out here? Like Einstein or Oppenheimer or any folks like that?
No, I did not meet any of them in the sense that I shook hands with them. I was in a group that saw General Groves, and one time Fermi at a distance, but no, I've never had the privilege of first-hand meeting or conversation.
People talk about the Roosevelt cell, and I understand there was also a Grove cell. Did you want to talk about those?
I'm afraid I don't know anything about a Grove cell. There was a cell that I am familiar with that was called the Roosevelt cell,
the Roosevelt.
And really what it was just a regular cell which consists of about 6 converters that was set up and prepared and everything polished and shined up for a visit from President Roosevelt, which I don't think ever took place. But yes, I was familiar. I've seen it. I was not directly involved with its preparation, but it was being prepared in a building just very close to where my work assignment was.
Okay. What are some of your most vivid recollections of the time that you spent at Oak Ridge and K-25? Some of your favorite memories working here, living here?
Well, I guess my favorite. Are you asking me about the actual work memories, or are you also including memories of the town and the people?
Let's do both. Let's talk about work memories first, and some of your favorite memories of working at K-25. I'll rephrase it, and then we'll talk about some of your favorite overall memories and your fondest memories of being here at Oak Ridge.
Well, I guess my very, very first memories that were just of long hours working, trying to understand the workings of the process and why some things wouldn't work. For example, the centrifugal pumps at first did not work satisfactorily. And I spent many hours just sitting beside the pumps and watching them to try to determine why the pumps would fail. And they usually failed when they were being shut down. And finally, they decided that the pumps had to be remachined to provide a little bit greater clearance between the rotating members and the stationary members in order to make them work properly. On shutting down, the pump lost its magnetic center, and the impellers would move back and forth, and there was not enough clearance, and the rotating part would hit the stationary parts and make them tear up. And some of my memories are just sitting for hours watching those pumps to see what made them self-destruct. Then other memories that you look back on them somewhat with amusement. The construction workers had classified blueprints, and those of us in the operating aspects or operating departments were not permitted access to the drawings initially. Yet we were supposed to learn and understand how to operate it without having the appropriate clearance to look at the drawings. That fortunately was rectified after a while, but when you would walk into a cell that was being constructed, one of the construction worker would look at you, and if you didn't have the right kind of badge, he'd cover up the drawings so you couldn't look at the drawings. Another memory, of course, that we look back on with some amusement was that they had coded words and coded numbers so that a simple material such was common to everybody, like nitrogen, had a code. And initially we weren't privy to what the codes meant. So those are some of the memories, and of course the fascination with how fast the construction was going is another memory that I look back on rather fondly. Also, as the building was growing, the people working there was growing rapidly, and many of the people that were working with us initially were in the military, and it made no difference what your military classification was. The important thing was your technical background, and so you found situations where a sergeant would be working for a private, and that I'm sure sometimes didn't go over too well, but they had to take advantage of the expertise that was available, and their military classification was just set aside. So we had civilians and military people working side by side, and the military people went back to their military barracks, and those that, such as myself, that were more fortunate, went home to their homes. I might say, as an aside, I came to Oak Ridge not in uniform, but being very much aware of the fact that if I did not go, I would be put in uniform and sent. So I felt very fortunate that I had the good fortune of being sent here somewhat as a civilian and able to have my wife with me. We had no children at the time.
You mentioned the military being out here, and I'm just curious, what sort of job roles did military personnel serve? Did they do similar type work? Was it construction type work, or what was it that military personnel?
Most of the military people were in what I would call, and what we did call, a production work. They were operating the gaseous diffusion plants or buildings. Initially, you couldn't tell a civilian from a military in the kind of assignment they had. It was primarily following the construction and then starting up the buildings. That was just really very much in the early period. I don't know exactly when the military people pulled out, but they had to get people here to do the job. They couldn't get enough civilians, and they put military people. There were Army and Navy. And the work assignment, as I said, and I'm repeating, I realize, it was not governed by their rank in the military.
Expertise. Okay, I'm going to have him change tapes real quick. The tape's only run 30 minutes, so